Hello and welcome back to A Splash of Paint, brought to you in association with the SAA, Society for All Artists. Now it's time to put the final finishing touches to today's Try Your Hand At watercolour project that we started earlier on in today's programme. This is where we got to. It's nice and dry, and I'm now going to go for the dark shades of the animal. What we're going to do is start off again with a size 8 brush, and we're still using natural grey. It's nice to drop a little bit of burnt sienna into the grey because that will give you a slightly different tone again. It might not seem massively different in the palette, but on the paper when it dries it will look very different. Quite a dark colour as well. So starting to bring out dark areas, and I'll work in the ear, and then I'll follow the shape of this over, creating a bit of a sort of flap as it comes over the top there. I do quite a lot of animal portraits, and you start to realise that lots of things are very similar in dogs and cats. Animals, ears are similar, noses, eyes, very similar. So once you've picked up a few basic tips and tricks, it kind of makes the job a lot easier, to be honest. It really does make a difference. So I'm just working around some of these areas now. I'm sort of very crudely filling in. Now obviously watercolour paint dries in minutes, but it doesn't matter if it dries because this colour I've mixed is quite thick, which means it can be reactivated, and it's also quite handy because it's pretty straightforward when it comes to blending strong colours away, so there's no major issue as regards drying time. So just working very carefully around the eye and just kind of filling that gap in a little bit there, not making it look too patchy. There we go. Then using a clean brush and a bit of kitchen roll again to wipe the excess off, I'll use just water and I will scrub quite firmly the actual colour until it blends into one area. So actually losing the edge on the inside and then making sure all the colours nicely blend in. And this is creating a light highlight, and then just adding one or two extra little bits, making sure that there's no definite hard edges as such on this. Working up the sort of line as it touches the white part of the head with a bit of a flick because you want to create a bit of a hairy effect, and at the same time as doing this it's always quite nice just to break any outlines with a damp brush and make it look as though it's a little bit on the hairy side, not too much. I mean, this is quite a short-haired animal anyway, so it doesn't want a massive amount of this. There we go. So I'm softening around the eye as well. I always leave the eyes to the last because that's the magic moment when you get the eye on. Same on the other side as well. Grey, little bit of burnt sienna, and work around this area just the same as what you've just done there. So we'll start off by putting the edge of the, make sure the colours match, edge of the ear there. You always get a bit of a triangular shape just there. If your dog's got floppy ears, it's probably got a triangular shape there, which curves in. It's quite a common thing that you see quite a lot. Filling the end of the ear in, and then we're going to go over onto the actual main body. So it's the same basic principle, very loosely painted in, but then you're going to pull out all the darks and the lights and the shadows and everything like that. I'm just being a little bit cautious about this side because the light's kind of coming this way, which we can tell from the ground area, and I've also got some tanned areas around the eye as well, so leaving those alone for the minute and then working underneath that eye. Keep an eye on that piece there and just bring it down. That was the joke of the day, by the way. Bring it down there and then it follows down to a bit of a point on that side, so you can see in a basic form it's starting to take shape. Clean brush, same job again. Bit of blending, blend all the colours in to each other. we go. And then put a few flicks on the edges. So it's flicking out inside the ear, almost make it look as though it's got some long hairs in there. There we go. So we're starting to get a bit of a nice blend. You can always tidy up. I quite often do an animal portrait, you know, spend a fair bit of time on it, look at it the following day, then come back to it and add a little bit more, because it's got to be spot on really for the animal portraits, especially if it's for a commission, and that's the thing, that it's got to look exactly right. So I'm just softening the edge, the sort of hairy edge if you like, and then a little bit of dry brush just coming down over the white part there, making sure all those lines are nice and smooth around the eye. Size 8 brush is great for this because it's big enough to do the large areas, but it's also got the nice point on it. There we go. So that's basic blocking in, making sure these bits are nice and soft. There's also a big chunk of darkness just on the back there. It kind of comes from a point. So it's the same colour again, I've just mixed a bit more. But I'll do it on a bit of a flicky edge. This is more of an incidental part, to be honest. It doesn't need to be all that obvious as such. Bringing it down. So that's like a bit of a sort of spot on the top of the back, and then using the water again, because that's where the painting is going to finish there, so I'm just going to soften it out. So I'm just whizzing down with a damp rather than a wet brush, and you can see that starting to fade off. I'll go again, water, tissue, and then make it all disappear away. And then I could always squeeze my brush through my fingers and just put one or two little creases, you know, as the kind of flesh is all gathered together. You can emphasise those a little bit later if you need to as well. And there's probably another little bit of that just coming down there, but that's a very precise area there. There it is. So we're starting to get a bit of shape out of this. I've just got a bit of a dry brush there, just adding one or two darker bits. Very, very dark grey, one of the darkest colours in the picture, is always good for going just inside the ear. And then we'll do this side as well. Clean brush on the tissue, and then we'll soften that into the actual ear there. When you blend it away, that's when it gives you the impression that you could actually go in there like a bit of a cave, a bit of an opening. That was like you'd want to go in there like, but it's just to give you the idea. Natural grey is a cold recession colour, a distant colour, and it gives you that nice feel of distance. It's good to stand back and look at your pictures. We can see in there that's working quite nice. Just going to put one or two bits of strong grey dry brush, creating texture. This is using more the side of the brush for doing this. And then we'll move on to the eyes. The thing with eyes, I mean, I think people have a bit of a fear about them, but to be honest, it's probably one of the easier parts of the picture. There we go. So that's just me pottering. This is pottering painting, skimming, dry brushing, adding a bit of texture, blah, blah, blah. There we go. Now for the eyes, I'm going to use a smaller brush. I'm going to use a size 6. I'm going to start off with the same really strong grey, because if you imagine the eye of the dog, or any animal eye, or even your eye as well, it's got an eyelid. And that, if you look at my hand, you can see it goes over the top. So imagine that this is the eyeball, that's the lid. There's a shadow that goes under there. Now that's quite important for the animal portrait. So what you do is you go in and you put this really dark, thick wedge just on the top there, very strong. And then we'll do the same for this side. That's the shadow, okay? That'll take it in a minute. Clean brush, mix up a new colour, burnt sienna. Burnt sienna with grey is a nice brown for a dog's eye. Not too bright, and not too thick at this point. And then we'll blend out from the grey. We'll come out from the grey with the burnt sienna. But you tend to leave a little bit of a white patch on this first stage. So just working around the shape there and leaving just a little white speck in the middle. Clean brush, wipe it on tissue, and then just basically soften it in with a damp brush. That makes it look almost like a bit of a sort of round shape, making sure that the grey is coming down dark enough at the top. You can always go back in a little bit of extra darkness if you need to do that as well. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of detail around the edge. I will come back and add the highlight in the actual pupil and iris in a second, but I'm using a very, very thick grey. I'm working around the edge of the eye, put in just a bit of darkness in there, that sort of thing. Same for this one as well. The thing is, you can spend a long time on this, but hopefully this try your hand at project will give you a few of the essentials for doing animals in watercolour. So we're trying to get all the darkness around the eye there. Let's get a bit of darkness coming over there, over the nose and everything. Okay, I want to put the pupils in with a very dry brush, and what you tend to do is you do a bit of a C shape. One thing you don't want to do is see all of it, so I'm just painting the bottom kind of C shape of this. Looks a little bit starey at that point. Clean your brush, wipe it on tissue, and then just sort of nudge very carefully. You can see I'm resting on my paper. Nudge all these lines away, make it look as though it's part of the eye. It sort of blends it into the picture. You don't want to see a huge amount of detail. Let's put a bit of dark at the bottom there as well. Just making the pupil a little bit darker. There we go. I get a bit of white on this to finish off. This is opaque white. Just going to squeeze it on there. Now, opaque white is very strong. Clean brush, a little bit of water for the white. Put too much water and you've got problems, because the white will just disappear when it dries. And the highlight is not a dot, it's more of a line, and it kind of follows the top. That's a little bit too dry there. I'm very, very cautious with the water, what I put on for this. I'll put a big line, then a spot next to it, and exactly the same place on the other side. Big line, spot next to it. And then there's a nice little finishing up point. Make sure you've got a very nice point on this brush. And you always get a bit of white that gathers at the bottom, a little highlight that just catches at the bottom of the dog's eye. And the reason for this is because it's the sort of tear gland, if you like, and it just kind of creates a bit of a sparkle, puts a bit of life into it. So I'm just putting very gentle, soft white lines just around the eye. It's also very nice on the top of the nose as well, because the nose is normally wet, bottom of the nostril there, you can see what difference that makes. And then just the odd little bit of kind of white hair, just the odd sort of random hair that's just kind of poking through every now and again. There we go. It's nice just to pop those in, especially kind of coming out of the ear, that sort of thing. You always get a few grey hairs. Making sure the nose is a little bit crisper. Again, a bit of pottering painting, just put a bit of white over there. And then, final step, folks, rig a brush and a bit of grey. And then we're just going to go for the couple of very, very quickly painted hairs coming out for the whiskers effect there. And I think we have got a nice, pretty quickly painted but effective Jack Russell puppy there, folks. Give it a go. So there you have it, folks, a simple project for you to try. And remember, we're always keen to know how you get on. So why not upload examples of your work on the community section of the SAA website. Just visit saa.co.uk for details. Well, folks, time for our final break now, but join us in part 4 when leading SAA artist and personal friend Jeremy Ford shares his top tips for giving pastel painting as the perfect professional finish. And I'll be dipping into the splashy paint post bag to answer a few more of your artistic questions. I'll see you soon.